Thank you. So let's see what happens here. So for 30 years, is that all I need? So let's look. Do I have what I need? That's present value. There's my interest rate. There's my time. Hey, there's 5 players here, right? Well, what do I know? Well, I know my future value. My future value better be 0, obviously. So what's missing? The payment is what's missing. Okay, so let's go to Excel. And I'm going to jump over to my other computer. Yes, I'm going to stop them from sharing. Interesting. This is not what I want. What happened here? Escape. Oh, there we go. So I guess got to get into Excel. I thought I had it open. There we are. So here's my Excel. Let's share this with you. Yeah, I already stopped my other person from sharing. This is myself. Yes, just give me Excel, please, for God's sakes. Give it to me. Ah, all right, now. Here we are. Okay, so in this situation here, okay, we're gonna borrow $280,000. So I'm gonna put that right over here. Okay. Now, again, I like to make this into dollar signs. It just makes me happy. Put my interest here, and then go make sure that you name that again, as has been our convention here. Interest 1, and then payment. Now I don't know what the payment is, so I'm going to say equals payment, just like that. So it's the rate divided by 12, comma, number of months is 360. It's a 30-year loan, comma, and then it's negative A1. You must use a negative. Again, I cover this in the video, but future value is grayed out. That's because it's optional, because it assumes that it's 0. That's just how this has been set up. If you don't put the negative on the A1, if you forget the negative here, what happens is it makes your payment negative, okay, which is fine, and I can work with that, but I prefer this because then my formula works out in my head appropriately. I want this to be a positive number, so I start with this mountain of debt, and then my formula is going to simply be equals A1 times parentheses 1 plus interest divided by 12 minus payment. Darn it, I didn't name this payment. Do as I say, not as I do. All right, let's try it again. There we go. And off to the races we go. And again, at 361, better be 0 or you messed up. Perfect. All right. So then the question might be on the homework assignment or the test or the quiz or whatever, might be something like this. What is your monthly payment? And of course, the answer is $1435.15. Cool. Nice. Awesome. And let's make that into dollar signs, I guess. So it looks more professional. How much did you spend on the house total? Now, a lot of people will think they spent $300,000 on the house. Those people are silly. They're absolutely silly. You made 360 of these payments. Does that make sense? Right off the bat, you can see that that is way more than $300,000. How do I know? Because 360 times 1,400, 360 times 1,000 is 360. There's 360,000 for goodness sake. So this is a lot more. Plus our down payment, which we said was 20,000. Okay. So the total amount of money we spent on this house is $536,000 and change, which is a lot. Okay. Now, before you get all, again, watch my video this week, but remember, nobody wants to live in a house that you can buy for cash. Nobody, not LeBron, not nobody. I don't care. He can buy a fancy, he could buy it with cash, with his walking around money, what I would consider a nice house, I'm sure. However, he wouldn't want to live in it because he'd think it's a piece of junk. And that's how we are as people. Okay. I have enough savings to go buy myself maybe a beat up double wide somewhere, it's kind of falling off the cinder blocks or something. Well, there's nothing wrong with that per se, but yeah, it's not necessarily where I want to live. I could afford a 1980s meth wagon, RV, to live in too. I don't want to live in it because that's what I could buy cash with. Okay, I want something that I like. To do that's going to cost money. That's how life goes. And you're borrowing this $300,000 for 30 years. So clearly it's going to cost a lot of money in interest. Okay. Now, how much interest was it? Did you pay? Well, pretty straightforward. It's simply the total cost minus the cost of the home, the purchase price. Not what I borrowed, but the purchase price. So I paid $236,000 in interest. Now, the key that we're going to talk about today is how can we save money on this? How can we save this $236,000? How can we make that lower? Maybe we can get it down to $200,000, which you're like, well, it's still a lot of money. Yeah, but you save $36,000. That's a car, okay? Or maybe you could save 50 grand or 70 grand. Okay, well, after a while, it starts paying you money to save this. So there's two things that we can do. Okay, we can do one of two things to save money on this loan. We can either pay extra each month. When I say each month, I don't necessarily mean each month. For instance, you might put your IRS tax return, or you might put your grandma gives you money every year, or your Christmas bonus. You might just, as a general rule, put those things toward the loan once a year. That's fine. Any little bit helps. Okay. You might be a deal where I'm going to start putting $20 extra a month in early on because that's all I can afford. And then after a few years, I get a raise and I can start putting more in. That's cool. And so we're not going to do that here. We're going to stick with a solid amount every month. Okay. And that's how we're going to play it out. That said, in your daily life, you can change it up differently. So you might plan to put an extra, let's say $20 a month towards it, but then there's your kid gets braces or you need a new transmission or something. So there's be a couple of years where you can't afford to do that. And that's fine because that's peachy. You can always pay more, just never pay less. This is not a karma situation. You understand? So just because you've been paying extra every month for the last 20 years, and then you get into a bind, you're like, I'm just going to skip a couple payments. The bank will call it good. No, they won't. No. That's not how it works. Okay. You must make $1,435.40 every month payment, or they will come and take your home away from you. Okay. That's just how it goes. And yeah. So just be aware of that. Okay. So we can either pay extra each month or we can refinance. And so we're going to talk primarily today about paying extra every month. Okay. So we're going to start off with this guy right here. Now, again, typically what happens is when you buy your first home, you are stretched to make this payment. That is all you can do. And at this point, you might be starving for the last week of the month to make the payment. Okay. And that's typically how people are the first home they buy. It's a stretch usually. And then after a while, you're like, it's nothing. I mean, when we bought our first house, I think we paid, what was our monthly payment? $730, $750. Now we thought that was a lot. It was all we could swing because, I was a young teacher then. And then I had to work my summers and save all that money to be able to spread it around, to make payments and stuff. And it was tough. But again, that was 20 something years ago now. And then after a while, you're like, well, that was nothing. So $750 or whatever. So we paid extra on it for a while. Yeah, maybe I don't remember the exact amount I paid, maybe $1,000 a month. And that really paid it down quicker. And then over time, we refinanced several times to lower interest rates. And we'll talk more about that, how to do that. So, but today we're going to talk about this. So typically we might wait something like 6 years or let's say 5 years. Let's say after 5 years, that is the end of the 5th year. You can make a note of that. So the end of the 5th year. And what does this amount of money represent? This amount represents how much I still owe on the loan. So you borrowed $280, you've been paying for 5 years, and you've paid it down to $255,000, which you think, it's kind of depressing. Sit tight. It starts off slow, but toward the end, you start paying it down a lot quicker. Okay. But let's say that after 5 years, you are going to start paying extra. And that's just how I'm going to set it up. So after 5 years, you decide to pay an extra, let's just do $300 a month. And the question is, how much will you save? Now, a lot of people will think, well, I'm paying extra, I'm not going to save. Well, you're going to save, but you're not going to save like in your monthly budget. Your monthly budget is going to look worse because instead of paying $14.50 or whatever it was toward our house, now we're paying $17.50 towards our house. So on a month to month to month to month to month basis, it might be that my budget looks a little worse from month to month to month. Over time, however, I'm going to save money. And so we're going to keep track of that. So right now, as of now, we have spent 60 payments. Oops. Well, I'm going to write this out in words and I'll do the formula in a minute. Plus the down payment. Does that make sense? So far, that's what we've spent. So I'll make it up here. I'll actually do the formula. So 60 times the payment plus the down payment, which was 20,000. Okay. So as of right now, we have spent $106,000. Okay. So that's what we've already paid toward the bank. Okay. Just keep that in the back of your mind. I'm trying this a little different. In the past, I've always done it this other way, and some people get it really fast. Some people struggle with it. So because of this thing, I've been thinking about a better way to maybe approach it. So maybe we'll see what happens from here. So this is the start of the 6th year. Does that make sense? 61 was the end of the 5th year. 62 is the start of the 6th year. So I'm going to pay an extra $300 a month. So I'm going to subtract an extra $300 from this. Does that make sense? Now, some people would rather come over here somewhere and make a box and name it extra payment or something, or new payment. That's fine. If that makes you happy, go for it. I am personally just going to do minus 300 here. When you hit enter, I want you to see this. You should see this little green triangle up here in the corner. What that means is this cell is different from all the cells around it. And so that's Excel's way of saying, hey, remember, you changed the formula, but you didn't change anything except for this formula. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the end of it here. And if you double click right here, it'll paste it down, or you can just click and drag like we've done previously. And now scroll down a ways, and what you will find is that eventually the thing gets paid off. And it gets paid off right about in here-ish, okay? And again, if this was an accounting class, I'd get nitpicky about it, but it's not an accounting class. I want to know about how much do you save. You'll be within $1,000 or $2,000, depending on how big the loan payment is. Good enough for government work, okay? This is where it went negative, okay? This is where I clearly have paid it off. This was positive, this was negative. Somewhere between the two is where I paid off. Now listen, that's 279. Are you with me? That's line 279. Come with me now. Let's come back up here. And I'm just going to highlight these guys. Notice that I didn't click on the side of the bar. I clicked right in the middle of it. And I'm just highlighting. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to use a cool feature of Excel. So when I did that, now I've highlighted them all. That's all I've done. If you look down here on count, you see that right there? It says 218. What that means to me is this. There's 218 months where I was paying extra. Okay? So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to say equals 218 times parentheses my payment plus, oops, give it to me, you hippie, plus 300. Now that formula, the way I wrote it is very important. You must include the parentheses. Because remember, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, PEMDAS, order of operations, whatever you want to call it. I want to add first, and I want to get $1,700, whatever my new payment is, right? That's in essence what I'm paying each month. So I'm paying $1,700 and whatever dollars times 218. So for the rest of the time, so initially I spent $106,000, right? The first 5 years. The rest of the time I spent this much. That's a grand total of this much money I spent on the house. Whoa, Jay, that's great. $484,000. Yeah, I know, it's pretty sweet. It's a lot less than it was previously. In fact, let's come up here and check it out. Up here previously, you'll recall that I spent this much money on the house, right? So equals this guy minus, and I'm gonna, just a minute, one moment, please. Well, fiddle faddle. I thought I copied it. Apparently I didn't copy it. Let's copy, Control C. Let's bring it up here and just paste it somewhere, shall we? And be careful when you paste that. I'm going to paste it as a value. And I did that because what I didn't want to do necessarily, if I bring the formula up here, it'll I clicked on 2 cells. I clicked on this cell plus this cell. When I come up here, it's going to take relative to those 2 cells. So I just copy it as a value. But the idea is I would have spent this much. That was my baseline minus this amount here, what I actually paid. And so I saved $52,000 on this. Another way to do this would be to do this. So that's one way to do it. That's my new way, and I think I'm going to continue doing it that way. But this is how I've done it in the past. 360 times the payment plus 218 times, what just happened? Oh, because my num lock got off. 218 times parentheses payment plus 300 plus the down payment. That's the way I used to do it. What just happened here? Something happened. Oh, because I didn't do 360 times the payment, you goober. You did 60 of the original payments. Atta babe. There you go. Should be the same number if you did it right. If you didn't do it right, you'll screw it up. So again, this is the way I used to do it. I think I'm going to start teaching it this way this term, where this is what I've paid through the first 5 years. This is what I paid the rest of the time. And then this right here is the sum of what I ended up paying. And then if I subtract them from the baseline, and of course our baseline is going to always be what I would have paid, which is 360 times the payment plus the down payment. Okay, if I take and subtract those two values, that is how much I will have saved. And so how much I save is simply what I would have paid minus what I did pay. Okay, so how much did I save? I saved $52,000. Okay, we're going to do several of these. You'll get the hang of it. It's really not that difficult. Something else I might ask you is, when will the loan be paid off? Oops, paid off. Learn how to spell. I don't know. Let's find out. Well, we came down here and we said it was at line, was it 278, I believe? Is that right? 278, 279? Yeah, 278. Remember, this is 278. So the top one doesn't count. Well, 278 months divided by 12 is, it's going to 23 years, basically. 23 years and 2 months if you're paying attention. 23 years. Well, isn't that 7 years earlier? That's right, it is 7 years earlier. Wow. I mean, I'll be done paying this much at 7 years earlier than I would have. Yeah, exactly. Hey, that's nice. That's something that'd be really cool to look forward to in the future, is I paid this house off, a lot sooner. I feel good about myself. Okay. Any questions on this one? We're going to do several others, so try to stick with the program, but it's going to be the same basic setup every time. Okay, but if there's any questions, let me know here real quick. I'll pull the chat up, I guess, if I can find it. Where's the chat? Oh, wait, maybe it's up here. Oh, I don't know. Where am I at? I don't know. Chat? I don't see any chats. Everybody good?
Hey Jay, show us the Excel formula again one more time when you added the extra 300 a month.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's come down. Oops. So I guess this is the way I would do it if it was me now. Is just that. And you want that part of it, or do you want the part where I'm actually doing it in the running formula, the running total?
No, this is good. I just missed it when you did it. Thanks.
Okay. And I think this is how I'm going to teach it this time. Is just I'm going to do, this is what I paid for the first 5 years, and this is what I paid after that, and then add them together. I think maybe that less confusing, I hope.
Is there a place where this is written down beyond your videos, like this formula and the steps to be taken through?
Yeah, in my notes somewhere. I guess I can put up a note page for you.
I think
Well,
that would be helpful.
Kind of. I mean, yeah, I can write the formula down.
Mm-hmm.
I can kind of write the formulas down, but I don't know if that's going to help you per se, because be in mind that every time it's going to be different in terms of when I start paying extra.
Right. So the best thing to do is to watch these videos and perhaps follow along step by step and just remember.
That's what I'd do.
Yep. Okay.
All righty. Well, let's go buy another house. Okay. So I'm just going to write the formula here. So we buy a house for, am I still sharing? Okay. Yeah. Buy a house for, let's say 230,000. If I get a comma in there, it's going to weird me out. I'm going to use a comma just for the sake of what I'm doing here, but don't ever use a comma in your formulas. It really freaks the computer out. Just bear that in mind. We're going to put 10% down. We're going to finance or borrow, if you prefer, at 4.1% for 30 years. Cool. All right. So let's set this baby up. So first of all, I'm going to make note to myself here, the down payment. So it's 10% of 230,000. Which is 23,000. Okay. That's my down payment. Don't forget that. Now in the real world, you'd never forget that, because the first time you write a check for $23,000, it's a little bit of a shock to your system, or they take it out of your bank account. It's a little bit of a shock to your system because you're like, I had some money and now I got nothing. Okay. But in this class, or any class like this, it's easy to, forget $23,000. I don't think you'll ever do that in the real world. But don't forget that. So that means I'm borrowing 207. I have to borrow the rest of it. So I paid part of it. The bank's paying the other part of it for now. I'm going to pay them off over time. So 0.041 is my interest rate. Again, make sure you name that. And let's get a payment going. So our function to me equals PMT. So it wants the rate divided by 12, comma, 360, comma, negative A1. Okay, same formula every single time. I'll post this video as well, or I'll post a spreadsheet as well after the video goes up. So there you go. This is going to cost me right at $1,000 a month. And make sure you label this as well. Bam. So our formula, same every time. And then let's go see if we did it correct. If we did it right, what should happen when we did it right is it should be 0 at 361. And it is. Awesome. Okay. So the questions again that you'll be asked on a problem like this are, what is your monthly payment? And of course, the answer to that is $1,000.22. Cool. What is the total cost of the home? What I mean by that is, if you did nothing else, you could also think of this as a baseline. How much would this house cost me? Okay, plus the down payment, right? So 360 times the payments plus the down payment. This house is going to cost me $383,000. Okay. So right off the bat, what is the total interest? I mean, that's just comes to mind. Like, what the heck? This house was supposed to cost $230. Why is it all of a sudden that it's costing me $383? Well, because interest. So I paid $153,000 in interest. Okay. So anything I do from here on out, it's going to save me money. It's going to save me somewhere between $0 and $153,000. Okay. If I wrote a check for the bank today for the entire balance of the loan, $207,000. Oh, psych! I don't need a loan. I had the whole $230. Then I would have saved all of the interest. And if I only add, like, say, 20 cents one time in there somewhere, that's an extra 20 cents on 1 month anywhere in there, I will save some money. Okay. What will it be? Slightly more than 0, but not much. And so anywhere between there, obviously that's going to help me out. Now, let's say that now usually a person waits a few years, because if you could have swung more money, that's what you'd have done. You would have bought a bigger home, is what you wouldn't have paid extra probably right here. What you probably would have done is you probably would have just bought a fancier house to start with. Okay, a fancier house is going to cost more money. And instead of paying $1,000 a month, you'd end up paying, let's say, $1,200 a month is what you'd ended up doing. That's kind of human nature. I'm richer than this. I can't be bothered to live in this neighborhood. I'm going to go buy a fancier place. And so the process is the same with, with bigger numbers. Okay, typically. That's not 100% accurate. I mean, some people would, well, I like this little place over here. It didn't cost much and it saves me a lot of money. Good for you. Good, cool. In that case, that person might instead of paying extra every month, they would have just put a gianter down payment down because they can maybe afford a bigger down payment. And then they'd have paid that house off a lot quicker because they would have borrowed less money. Okay, so there's lots of moving parts and pieces here. We're just going to do the general idea that after 6 years, you're going to pay extra. So you're going to pay an extra, oh, I don't know, let's put $200 a month. Oh, come on, learn how to type. Cool. So then how much do you save? Again, over time. Okay, so let's first of all find 6 years. So 6 years we'll get over with at line 73. So this is the end of the 6th year. Okay. So far we have spent $23,000 for the down payment plus 72, that's 6 years, times payment. And I'll put payment 2, that's what I've called it, right? And so let's find out what that actually is. So it's equals 72 times payment 2 plus the down payment of $23,000. So far we've paid $95,000 for this house. Okay, that's through 6 years. Okay, so this is the end of the 6th year. This is the beginning of the 7th year. So what I'm going to do is going to the end of this guy, I'm going to put an extra minus 200 because we're paying an extra $200. Again, the little green arrow shows up. That means that only this cell was changed. So if you double click right on the corner, it'll paste it down, or you can click and drag it, whatever makes you happier. Boom. Bam. Hey, that's about as close to 0 as you're ever going to see right there. You with me? So on month 288, I pay this baby off. So while I'm here, I'm just going to do this calculation. 288 divided by 12. Is that exactly 24? It is. It's 24 years exactly. I'm going to pay this baby off in 24 years instead of 30. In other words, I'm going to save 6 years. I'm going to pay it off 6 years early. Or if you want to say I paid it off after 24 years. That's something to think about, okay? You're only going to be in debt for 24 years because you were paying extra every month. That's a pretty sweet deal. Now, the way I like to do this, I like to click right on this last one, and I'm just going to highlight in the middle of it, drag it up, just highlighting, that's all I'm doing, not copying. And I'm going to go back up here because I really suck at subtraction. And I'm going to come back up here to 74, and I'm going to let go. Now, it's 216 months. You see that right there? That was 216. So I went equals 216 times parentheses payment 2 plus $200. Okay. So instead of paying $1,000, I was paying $1,200. That's what I'm saying here. And so the second part of the loan, when I was paying extra, I paid $259 for a grand total of $354,000. That's all I did was just add them up. I could have done that on my iPhone if I had an iPhone. Yeah, there it is. I could have done it any way I like. So again, I'm just going to copy that number up here so it's up here where I can keep my eye on it. Okay. So if you think about this, how much would I have saved? Well, I would have paid $383. That's if I did nothing else. That's 360 payments plus the down payment. So I would have paid that minus, this is what I did end up paying. So I would have saved $28,000. Okay. So because I paid an extra $200 a month for a total of, well, let's see, it was the first 6 years. So for 18 years, I paid an extra $200 a month. But because I did that, I was able to pay this loan off 6 years early, and I was able to save $28,000, almost $30,000. That's a lot of money to save for an extra $200 a month, or what is that, like 40 Dutch Brothers or something, okay? So think about that. This is the whole point of this class. If you take nothing else away from this class, I hope you feel good about loans going forward. I mean, this is some big stuff. It's some pretty heady stuff that you can save this kind of money just by paying extra. Question. Kia? Question?
Yeah, I was just thinking, does it, since you chisel away at the amount after a certain amount of time, does it, what am I trying to ask? Does it make more sense? Is it exponentially, it becomes, you pay it off quicker because there's less money in the account that is
Yeah.
getting
That's
interest
the
paid
whole
on?
point. Exactly. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of paying extra, is
But
because
you wanna,
you're paying off what you owe. So when they're charging you interest, you're no longer owing as much interest because there's not as much money that you borrowed. Exactly. That's the whole
right,
point.
right.
Mhm.
But after time, like after like 6 years in, you're like, okay, I'm gonna rev this up. Or maybe that's more like you've gotten used to your monthly payments and you can hopefully figure out how to afford to pay a bit more once
Well,
you're
I think,
6 years
yeah.
deep in a loan.
Well, I think mostly it's after 5 or 6 years, you hopefully gotten a promotion, getting a little better job, a little more money. Typically what it is. I mean, but maybe it is you suck at handling money, and so it took you 6 years to figure it out. But I
Right.
think mostly it's when you go buy a house, you buy, like, I don't know about the maximum, but you pay a lot more toward the maximum of what you can afford to buy, because you're buying this house, you don't want to buy a dump per se. So you
Right.
buy the nicest place that you can afford, which is usually a stretch for you initially. And then after 5 or 10 years or something, then you realize that what used to be a stretch isn't that much of a stretch anymore monetarily. So therefore, I can usually afford to pay a little extra, typically.
So with all of this you showed us, is there like 25 steps or is there like 6 steps? Because
25 steps.
well, I'm being facetious in that there's a lot of information and steps and numbers to put in at very specific times.
Well, okay, first of all, let's start off with this. This whole column here and those guys are the exact same thing we've been doing, right? There's
Yeah.
nothing new about that. So then the question will ask you something well, first of all, then you'll always have this equation. What is the total cost of the house? It's always this, always. It's the number of payments times the payment plus the down payment. Always, 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 always. Okay? And that'll be your baseline. That's how much did I pay for this house if I did nothing else. Okay? And it's not so much a formula. I mean, it is, but it's mostly just it's common sense. I mean, I made this many payments plus the down payment. That's what I paid for this house.
Mm-hmm.
And then how much is the total interest? Well, most people, when they see this number, they're like, just a gadgum minute. I paid $230 for this house. Well, no, the difference is obviously, this is what I did pay. This is what I was supposed to pay. The difference is interest. But that's not really a step. It's just, that explains why I'm getting paid. That's why I'm having to spend more money for the thing, because I borrowed this money. And, it's not like borrowing money from a friend for a couple of days and you give him a 6-pack of beer, or you do something for him or whatever when you're done. You borrowed $230 or $207,000 for 30 years. Okay. You wouldn't get by borrowing that money from your friend for a 6-pack or helping him move sometime. Okay. It costs a lot of money to do that. And so, that's something that comes to mind right off the bat. And then after that, it's just a matter of, okay, let's save some money. So we have one of two methods. We're either going to pay extra or we're going to refinance. So I'm going to do another example of paying extra. And then the video, I'll concentrate on the refinancing part of it. And in that video, what you'll see is the refinancing, the math is actually a little easier. But a lot of people get hung up on refinancing because they always talk about the companies that do it, banks, mortgage rates, whatever. They talk about, well, it'd be great to get a lower interest rate. Okay. The whole point of a lower interest rate is not to lower your monthly payment. Okay. And I'm going to show you guys that, because if you were to refinance what you currently owe, let's say you're 10 years into a loan, if you were to refinance that for 30 more years at a lower interest rate, and you were to pay the new amount that they told you to pay, you would actually end up paying more money over the long run. So what I'm going to teach you to do, and what most people do, is that instead of paying the newer, lower amount that you could pay, you're going to keep paying the old amount that you were paying. So in effect, what you're doing is paying extra. Okay. So let's say if I refinance this to some lower amount, and my monthly payment, instead of being $1,000, dropped to say $800. Well, that's cool. So I would only have to pay $800. But if I did that, I'm a fool, because it's going to take me longer to pay it off, and because it's longer, it's going to cost me more in interest. So, but if I keep paying the $1,000 a month that I was paying, in effect, what I'm doing is paying extra money every month, and that's how you save money refinancing. Well, nobody ever saved money refinancing by paying the new lower amount. You will end up spending more money, guaranteed. Take it to the bank every time. Okay. So we'll show that in a video this week. So I'm going to spend some time making that video probably later today and get that posted up as well. They in essence, both ways of doing this save you money because you're paying extra every month is what it effectively boils down to. Okay. So I want to do another example of this. If there's no more questions on this guy, again, I'll post this later. These are the questions that you will be asked. And typically I'll say after 10 years, after 6 years, whatever. That's what I'll do. Okay. On this next one, I want to change it up just a little bit. Let's say this. Let's say you can afford $1,300 a month for a payment, and you have 40 grand saved up. And you can get a 4.1% 30-year loan. Okay, what's missing here? Well, what's missing here is the present value. Okay, that's what's missing. And what's also missing is what kind of house you can actually buy. Okay, so my first instinct here is always to go put in what I know. So 0.041. Let's name this baby interest 3. Oh, you hippie. Interest 3. Cool. And the payment is $1,300 a month. Oops, that's not 13. Cool. And again, let's name this payment 3. Nice. And so because I don't know how much I'm going to borrow, I'm going to do PV, present value. So it's the rate divided by 12, comma, 360, comma, negative payment. Okay, again, negative because I want my answer to come out positive. That's the only difference. Okay, I leave the future value at 0 because I will be paying this off at some point. This is telling me that I can afford to borrow. I can borrow $269,040.64. Cool. That's the maximum I can afford to borrow. Well, then I can afford to buy $269,040.64 plus 40,000, or equals this plus 40,000. Okay, that's how much I can afford to buy. So I can afford to buy a $309,000 home. How do I know that? Because if I bought a $309,000 home and I subtract 40 grand off of that, I will need to borrow 269. 269 is the maximum that I can afford to borrow. Now, suppose I found a house that was, oh, it's so cute and it's only 270. Can I afford to buy it? Well, of course I can afford to buy it. 309 is the maximum I can afford to buy. 270 is less than this, so clearly I can afford to buy it. Notice that if I only bought a $270,000 house, I'd only be borrowing $230, and if I only borrowed $230, I wouldn't need to make a $1,300 a month payment. I could make a less payment every month. Maybe it'd only be $1,100, let's say. And if it was only $1,100, well, wait, but I can afford to pay $1,300. Yes, you can. So effectively, if you paid $1,300 instead of $1,100, you could pay right from the get-go an extra $200 a month for this house. Okay. So when I look at this problem right off the bat, I know this is the maximum that I can afford to buy. That's the maximum that I can afford to buy. So I am going to look at something here this will be, oops, I'm going to share this with you. One moment, please. Sharing. Here we go. So I'm going to go to Zillow. This will be part of our project later on. And so you'll see what I mean by this. You can go anywhere you like. I don't care. Walla Walla, Washington. Cool. Walla Walla, Oregon is not a place. I'd like for sale. Thank you. Whatever. And so up here under price, I'm going to go shopping for a house. And so my maximum is 309. Oops. And so I'm just going to shop for that. And any of these red dots that are left, I can afford to buy. All right. And I'm not going to get all excited about this. I'm just going to find a place, 250. Do I like this place? Oh, I love it as well. Okay, I'm buying this place. Sweet, 250. Please pay no attention to this estimated. It's an estimate. It's terrible, okay? But 250 is what I'm going to go buy, okay? So if I were to actually go, and I'm going to do this on another sheet here, just for fun, I think. If I were to buy a house for 250, buy a house for 250, okay, how much would I have to borrow? Well, I have 40,000 for a down payment, yes? So I would only have to borrow 210,000, I believe. Is that right? So I would be borrowing 210. Again, I can afford this house because I could have afforded a maximum of 309. So I bought this place for 250. Golden. It's easy. It's like going to Taco Bell and you have $300 in your pocket, and you're like, do I have enough to eat at Taco Bell? Oh, yeah, I hope so. It'd be ridiculous. So you go in there and you spent $5. Well, sweet. You clearly are within your means to do this. Now, in this situation here, you can see that I don't know the payment. Now you're like, wait, I thought my payment was $1,300. Just a minute. I want to show you something. To buy this house would only have to pay $1,014.72. Are you with me? So to do this, again, I'm just going to set my formula up the same way. But what I want you to see is right off the bat this time, you said you could afford $1,300. The bank, because you bought a cheaper house, says, look, you only owe us $1,000 a month to buy this house. But you're like, but I want to pay $1,300. Well, there's no, come back. There's no reason why you can't pay $1,300. But in difference to the last bunch of problems we've done, is that this one, I can afford to pay that $1,300 right from the get-go. Does that make sense? Okay. In other words, this house is not a stretch for me. It's basically $300 a month less than I said I could afford. And I said $1,300 would be easy for me. And cool, let's do this. So in this situation, because I bought a cheaper home, I can afford the extra $300 a month. 300. Well, okay, it's not 300. It's 286. It's actually 285. Let's be careful. People will freak out, Jay. 285, 28. Okay, does that make sense? 285, 28 would make this an even 1,300. That makes sense? Right from the start. Right from the start. Okay. So I still want to do that. So if I do that, how much will I save? Well, let's find out. In order to find something out, how much you would have saved, you're going to have to know what you would have paid, which is the baseline. Now, I'm going to do this by, I'm going to physically type it in this time. Does that make sense? The reason I'm going to do that is because in a minute, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to change that where it says 1,014.72. I'm going to change it to 1,300. So if I use payment here in this formula, when I change it to 1,300, it's also going to change. And I don't want that to happen. Does that make sense? So remember, if you type in 360 times payment, it'll take 360 times whatever the payment is. So if you change that payment, it's going to change everything. So plus, what was my down payment here on this one? That's 40 grand, wasn't it? plus 40 grand. So I would have paid $405,000 for this house over time. But now watch what happens. So if I pay that extra $285, so in other words, just $1,300 a month, boom. So scroll down here, and what you're going to find out is that right here, basically at 236, you see that? We paid the thing off. Now we didn't pay any of the normal payments this time. We paid it right from the get-go. So 236 is the number that we want to use. So up here, it's simply going to be equals 236 times this payment, which I can click on it now because it is the number that I want. I would have paid 405. Now I ended up paying 346. That is a difference of it's a difference of $58,000 for an extra $285 a month. Okay. And again, that's because I don't know, you want to say lived within your means, found a cute little house for cheaper than I could afford, whatever it is that makes you happy, how you want to say that. But the idea is because I did that, I was able to pay that extra amount right from the start. Okay. So in other words, I bought a cheaper house. It wasn't a stretch for me. Now there's nothing to say that I couldn't have paid the $1,014 for the first 5 or 10 years. I could have done that just as easily, whatever makes me happier. Okay, that's just a different way of going about it. In this case, they paid the extra the entire life of the loan. And just for fun, 236 divided by 12. So you pay this baby off in 19 years. Okay, so you saved over 10 years of payments because it would have taken you 30 years otherwise. So you saved over 10 years, 10 years and 4 months, I guess you saved, because you paid an extra $200 a month or almost $300 a month. So it really saved you time and it saved you a lot of money as well. Okay. This is how paying extra works. What do you feel comfortable about that one? Questions, comments, concerns? Cool. As far as the loan worksheet, in the loan worksheet, about half of them will have a situation where you pay extra, and about half of them will have where you do refinancing. Okay. And so just be aware of that as you're doing them. Don't start it until you've watched this video. Well, you've watched this video, but don't start that until you watch the video on refinancing, which, as I say, will be up later today, probably this evening. Maybe tomorrow morning we'll play it by ear. I typically have to come to work to upload my videos from home. Take forever to upload, it seems. So I will get that up though, and then we'll kind of play that by ear. Again, I'm going to write this here in giant letters. When you refinance, and I'll mention this big time as well, never pay the lower payment that they now allow you to pay. When I say never, I don't mean like if you're all of a sudden kid needs braces or something. If the new payment was, say, $300 less per month than your old payment, and you could, for the next 2 years or whatever, not make that payment and instead pay it to the dentist for braces, go ahead, because you have the freedom to do that. But as a general rule, always keep paying the same amount you were always paying or more. That's where that's where the savings comes in on refinancing. Okay. And so if you remember that part of the refinancing bit, it's really a lot nicer way of doing it. Questions, comments? No? Everyone's quiet. All right. Well, I think that's all I got. I'll finish recording this and get it up, or I'm not recording it, finish this process and get it posted. For some reason, these Zoom meetings take a long time to process. I'm not really sure why, but I'll get it posted as soon as I can, and probably be this afternoon before it's done, because it seems like it takes an hour or two to post. Anyway, so I'll let you know when that happens. Otherwise, I guess have a good weekend. Any other questions at all? All right, well, stay out of trouble. Let me know if you have any questions. And next week, that's the other thing I was gonna say. Next week, I think I'm going to do office hours, I think, at noon on Tuesday. So what I'll do is I'll send out an open invitation to my 3 college classes. And so anybody can pop in. My guess is that there'll be 1 or 2 people total. And I think that's just how it's going to be. But I think I'll do it at noon on Tuesdays from now on. And I might add an extra one, but we'll kind of play it by ear, see who shows up or not. So if you pop in and someone's talking about matrices and vectors and stuff, you're not in the wrong place. It's just someone's asking a question about linear algebra. So don't get weirded out about it. Just, sit tight and take a number and we'll see what happens. Okay. All right. Have a good weekend. Maybe. Oh, there's the end meeting. End meeting.